cool to be hanging out with you, Matt.
Yeah.
Thank you, Billy. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Internet. It's so good of you guys to join us. We're really excited to have both you guys and the entire world here to discuss about the evolving role of the CISO. Maybe we'll kind of jump into who our esteemed guests are, why you should care about what they think, and kind of start picking into their brains. I mean, like, nobody cares what I think, but I hear good things about you guys. Since Billy is located in the center, you want to give us a little bit of background about yourself, some of your professional experience, and some kind of interesting touch points about your professional journey?
Sure, thanks. It's really good to be here. I'm happy to be joined by, the Cyfluencer sort of brand and alongside Matt here. This is going to be great. For me, I've been around in the business 25 plus years. I've really been in the ground floors of starting up programs and figuring out how to evolve them and get them to operational mode. So with me, I've worked in a lot of different sectors for a lot of different programs and carried forward those experiences to here. I've been fortunate to work in places like Department of Homeland Security and General Electric and Dell and software companies like Ultra.
Oh, just like little guys, little players in the background market.
A few things here and there. For global folks, not just from the United States, but from a global perspective. Like when I worked at Hyundai, it's interesting when we think about what global means when your headquarters is in South Korea. So it kind of changes the way you approach solving problems from a security perspective.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. And as somebody who's an expat living in Israel, to hear Americans understand the different sensitivities of different markets, and especially the Asian market, and how you have to convey different ideas, and at the same point understand that their sensitivities, their touch points, their areas of risk sensitivity could be different for a number of strategic, historical, cultural reasons that are not necessarily in your wheelhouse. So I'm really excited to dive into that and see what we can get out. Matt, what about you? Where'd you come from? We found you in a field somewhere?
I was hatched, as all security professionals are, under a rock somewhere.
I saw a black hoodie. I knew it. That was you.
Yeah. It's off camera. We don't show that. So I've been doing security for 34 years now. I spent 24 with Intel Corporation. I justified, built, and managed their first security operations center. I landed and managed the first CERT team, so crisis response, right? So I was the incident commander for the company. I built and managed all of their cybersecurity for mergers, acquisitions, divestitures, site closures, so on and so forth, around the world. And so done a whole bunch of different stuff in that. So I've been on the product side as well for managing all the security going into the core chips, the CPUs. I built out the security for their AI group, so a multi-billion-dollar group. So kind of stuff like that. But during my entire career, it wasn't just internally focused. It was also working with the industry. So I've advised and continue to advise academia, businesses, and governments around the world about emerging cybersecurity issues and evolving best practices and how we align to that. I get to the pleasure of working with people like Billy and a whole bunch of other of the really brilliant people in the industry to tackle big problems, right? How do we solve ransomware? How do we do this? What do we do about insiders or nation states? And kind of evolve that. And one of the things that I'm somewhat known for is I do cybersecurity predictions, and I've been doing them for many years. So, looking forward in the next 12, 18 months, what are going to be the big attacks? What are going to be targeted? Who are the big groups coming after, right, those targets? And how is it going to impact the entire digital technology ecosystem that we all live and breathe in, that we all embrace and love and sometimes hate? How does it affect that and our expectations of what trust in our digital world is? So that's what I focus on. I'm also a CISO and a cybersecurity strategist and do all that other kind of fun stuff as well.
Yeah. I have to say, understanding your background in these predictions, that was a big reason why I was pulling for you on this panel. Understanding, going in year out And what are the expectations of change? What are the expectations of risk? And then looking back third quarter, fourth quarter, did we have to apply that thinking? Was that threat as big as we thought? Did we kind of overextend our budget, our thought process on something that wasn't necessarily there? Or on the other end, did we completely miss something that was under our nose?
Were we blindsided? Were we off in our predictions? So it's tough, right? But we need to look back, because if we don't look back on what we said, on what we predicted, there's no way of gauging it. And again, how do you trust somebody unless they have a good record of being correct, right? At least most of the time, better than flipping a coin.
I live in the Middle East. That's not how we make decisions. We're looking mostly for leaders that are incorrect the majority of the time, but continue to get that dirty money.
That's loud, really, right? We want the loud ones. They don't have to be right, just loud and boisterous. I can do that.
Exactly. We're looking for chest hair and a stiff upper lip, and that, sometimes that happens. And here it happens there. The right guy, the wrong guy. So it is. Anyway, beyond my region's problems. I'd love to hear about your opinion when you guys got into cybersecurity, had this idea, I'm going to become a CISO. What was the baseline expectation of that role? Because I think that a lot of people come in now and they say, the CISO, are they juggling every single ball in the equation? Are they the education HR guru who's trying to impose this broader theory that this is the cybersecurity strategy? Are they trying to implement new technology? Are they trying to get through to the C-suite that this is actually something we need to prioritize? So when you were young and naive, how did you go into this thinking, I have this skill set, I'm going to be prepared? Did you realize the extent that you were going into? Did you think that you got a grip, or were you day one completely and totally blindsided by the environment? Billy, what do you think? I see a smile.
This question is so loaded with so many different avenues. It'll be interesting to see the different perspectives here. For me, security was this place to reverse engineer things that were going wrong, whether it be in the product or the business. So said differently, it started out as this sort of risk venture that grew into all kinds of different places to where it is today. But I think how did I get into the business was by accident, and I've stayed here because I'm just increasingly curious over time.
So amazing. Matt, what do you say?
So when I started, cybersecurity didn't exist, right? Information security didn't exist. It was back in computer security and systems security. But I actually started outside of that. And I was doing internal and external investigations for theft and fraud and embezzlement, so on and so forth, working with law enforcement agencies for, organized criminals and, stuff like that. And I loved it. But computer security and all that was a dead end field when I started. There was no upward mobility. There was no chief executive or anything like that. And so the people that started, when we did 30 something years ago, you did it because you loved it. And I still love it today. I love the chaos. I love the ambiguity. I love the fact that I'm dealing with an intelligent adversary. I worked many years in IT as well, and I love my IT partners. They typically don't work with an intelligent adversary. They deal with static type of problems, right? That you can script and you can predict and how you're going to respond to it. They know what to do when the power supply goes out on a server in a data center. They've got it scripted, right? Whereas in cybersecurity, you're dealing with somebody that may be smarter than you, have more resources, more patience, a greater degree of motivation, right? And so it is a chess game of all chess games. And I absolutely love that. And that's what kept me in the industry. And I love it today.
Billy, do you think when you got into it, it was this passion project as well, that there were so many people that said that this is something that connects to me, or people were really, this is a job?
Never been the job, always was passion. I agree with Matt. Matt's taken it all the way back to the DARPA project, I think, or right around there. And when you go from there to here, it's interesting. As technology becomes more and more sophisticated, start, I think, chunking up security. So we've talked a little bit about Matt's background in security operations, or maybe even the AppSec side, or the network side of your company. that continues to grow and evolve. And when it does, the CISO's sort of breadth has to constantly expand. And it's important to have visibility and then have strategies to sort of continue to, I think, reduce that risk posture as much as you can while new innovation and transformational things evolve.
Wow, that's just a minor blend of every responsibility in real time. I don't even know where to start with that, but I wonder for your day to day, is there a prime thinking that you're approaching it? Am I approaching it that I need to go into the office and communicate risk to the CEO, or I need to go in and I need to be able to implement this new strategy, or is it? Mhm. Or is it really this kind of constant evolution, constant flow? Can you have that segmentation, or is not how a CISO has the ability to think now?
From my perspective, I think you absolutely can have the ebbs and flows. And I think from the way that I think about it, I think about external risks in. While there are internal risks out, I like to increase sort of or improve or make the cost of some infiltration a lot more expensive for the bad guys. I inherently believe that when we're running scanners or sniffers or tech packets, if we make it easy to get in and they get deeper and then they sort of move laterally, and all kinds of bad things occur from there. So if I can increase the cost of that resistance, it makes me feel a little bit better, at least. Now, that's not a challenge for all of you listening out there. So I'm not saying, hey,
go get him! Go get Billy! Would you like to give your IP range too?
I have his home address and the birth certificates of his family members if anybody is looking to connect afterwards.
I think that's just a good beginning, right? And then I think there's lots of other things internally. We have to look at hardening our product. We have to look at managing our core network. We have to look at sizing the complexity of our policies and managing sort of risk throughout the company. And I think that's just the day-to-day. And then there's the strategic play of what you ask for. And I think here, the strategy of security, that's what keeps you in it, because it's fun. It's like this human game of chess, and you're constantly thinking about different moves and different positions on the board, and how can you advance some strategies that you have while still marching along to the beat of the corporate objectives.
Matt, what do you think?
It's a combination, right? Our roles as CISOs are, and again, there wasn't CISOs many years ago, but security's roles in digital protection have increased, right? It's not only the infrastructure anymore. Now CISOs are being tasked with, hey, also protect our products, our services, our software, things of that. Oh, and also take a look at all of our third-party suppliers, vendors, customers, and business partners. And oh, hey, wait a second, there's privacy issues. Can you take care of that as well? And oh, you know what? We've got these ethics issues, these digital and AI ethics issues. Can you be a part of that? And so every day it's something new, because security is not a standalone organization or function or feature. It is actually woven into the fabric of every business unit, of every product, of every network and system. And so we are there to make sure of that confidentiality, availability, and integrity for the business. And so it's tied to the bottom line and the brand and everything else. That's why we're seeing an up level of CISOs that are now reporting, regularly to the board, and they're now reporting into the CEO versus 5 or 6 layers down. So, the visibility and the expectations are constantly expanding and growing. And the expectations of the customers now are growing as well. You lost my data, you exposed this. Wait a second, right? The product you sold me was hacked. They are becoming more sensitive to that, and security is now becoming a competitive advantage as well. So the demands on the CISO are just going up. So you have to have that strategy to be able to say, what do I need to do? How do I need to accomplish it? And, it comes down to, okay, what are my objectives? What's the opposition? What are the obstacles? What resources do I have? What missions do I have to create? And now I'm going to go implement all that and sustain it. right? And I have to do it in a way that's economical, that I'm not creating too much friction in the environment, ticking off the engineers or product lines or delaying products. And I also have to align to regulatory statutes that are also constantly changing all over the world. You got customers in Europe, you got to worry about more about privacy in Singapore and South Korea and all these other things. So it all comes crashing down. You better have a plan when you wake up in the morning, and it better be just moving forward and making sure that that larger strategy is being satisfied. Otherwise, you're just in firefight mode, which a lot of CISOs are. And if you're just in firefight mode, you're going to lose. You don't have, you'll have the resources you need. You will lose.
Yeah. It seems like a very difficult battle, because there's a lot of people who, they're running with this fire underneath them because they get assigned this problem, but they don't necessarily have the time or the strategic ability to plan out 3, 4, 5 years. What's going to be the trajectory of how we're going to approach this? What's going to be the funding approach? What's going to be the staff implementation versus technology? How to kind of play all of that.
And how will the infrastructure change, right? I mean, you may have had the perfect plan, 8 years ago when you had data centers, and then they all decided, hey, we're going to move to cloud. Oh, that's completely different, right? I have to come up with an entirely different set of stratagems to protect cloud now and the migration. And oh no, you want to keep hybrid? Oh, and you want to open your networks to peers and you're using open source software now? Whoa, wait a second, time out, it's challenging. But if it were easy, we would have solved it. It's not easy. And that's
I would be doing it instead of asking the questions, right? That's why I get to sit on this side of the desk, and you guys get to look pretty and have the nice words. So Billy,
lots of coffee, yes,
exactly. Well, lots of coffee always gets you through the day. I'd love to hear your standpoint. We talk about GDPR, and there's different international standards. What are some touch points that you can think of in the cybersecurity universe that change the responsibilities and expectations of the CISO? Was it an attack? Yeah, was it? What do you think?
Yeah, well, I think it's a cause and effect, right? So as I was thinking back, as you're asking the question, I immediately, there's frameworks and sophistication and laws, and then I was thinking, what influences those things to either get better, change, evolve, etc. And I think the last couple of years have been interesting. You start with things like SolarWinds, and you move to the Microsoft Exchange or the Kaesha, I think that was Colonial Pipeline. And you move forward to things like Atlassian, and then you have Robinhood, which is interesting. And then I think we ended last year with Apache or Log4j. So if you think about all those things, that's the cause, right? So people found ways to exploit and communicate the visibility of whatever they've exploited. And then I think regulators and other folks have said, wow, we need to take this a little bit more serious, because there's action and sort of the economic climate reverberates. So what we see here is now, what do we have? We have a new executive order from the President of the United States. We have SEC improving their posture on rules. We have NIST taking, I think, a more broad stroke and deeper dive into their regulations. You have some of the global folks also stepping out, saying, hey, we need to improve things like GDPR and other requirements. And then you have the practitioner's viewpoint of saying, listen, these are just a few that I've mentioned. So those of you who are listening, I know there's many more. But as these things continue to uplift themselves and we become broader and deeper, what's the CISO's viewpoint on how much, or the lowest common denominator that I need to build, or maybe the highest common denominator, if that's your perspective in your company? How do I build to that from wherever you are? And that's where I think that the sophistication begins inside the company.
Yeah, I mean, I see, especially now, there is an evolution of the CISO that's taking place. CISOs nowadays need to be less technical than what was required before, and instead be more business savvy, right? To understand how cybersecurity can help or potentially inhibit the business. They have to show more leadership capabilities, right? Especially in this tough time, right? There's incredible amounts of pressure and attacks and everything going on. So you need to have good leadership, and it's tough to staff people, so stuff like that. And you have to understand the value what is really the value of your program and how do you align it to maximize that value? Keep in mind, cybersecurity programs tend to cost more and more every year, between 20 and 60% more every year. You have to be able to work with the executives to help justify that and show how are you not only protecting from bad things, but also maybe improving brand or upsell, things of that sort, good, better, best marketing strategies, whatever. CISOs have to take more of that leadership position at the senior executive table. And a lot of that is around profit and loss. So it's more demanding for the CISOs nowadays because it's less technical. They have to divert a lot of that to people underneath them. You have to come up with that strategy, right? And you have to get that support and buy-in first. The other things that CISO has to deal with nowadays is much more professional attackers, much more, especially with nation states and organized cyber criminals. This isn't the kid in the hoodie down in their basement anymore. That's not who we're worried about, right? I'm worried about nation states that are spending literally billions of dollars either devising 0 days, vulnerability and exploits, or just simply buying them on the market, right? They don't even have to do that, or renting out services. We have to worry about that. We have to worry about the much greater expectations that we've all talked about, whether it's the customers, the business partners, insurance vendors, the board, executives, all of that. The role's changing, and it's not necessarily changing for good or bad. It's changing for what is needed from cybersecurity to help the business and the organizations. So I think that's a good thing, but we have to adapt to it.
Yeah, it's very interesting to hear you both discuss how the CISO is both taking on all these different roles and expectations, but they're not in a vacuum. It's building more of a rapport with the C-suite. It's, becoming more involved with marketing and business development and understanding HR. Do you think that somebody who intends to become a CISO needs to be more proactive in developing these interpersonal skill sets that, I don't want to say liberal arts thinking, but this ability to approach things? Yeah, I know it felt gross when it came out of my mouth. I saw that, and it feels the same way. But do you think that it's necessary for people who intend to be leading the broader security strategy to have this both multidisciplinary approach, but also this really diverse skill set to be able to manage all the different, problems that are going to be coming and the evolving, responsibilities that these individuals are going to be taking on?
I often coach people who ask me similar questions. The first thing that CISOs need to do is they need to learn how to read a balance sheet. If they don't understand the product they're selling and the way their business works, then there's no real success at the broader big table in your company. You have to be an executive first, and executives are there to provide services, to build products, to sell themes, to help other people, create efficiencies or do something better, smarter, faster, whatever. The second part, I think, is your area of responsibility and really challenging yourself to run security as an organization inside the company. It's not just security where you see all the bad stuff. Well, we see lots of bad stuff every single day. How do you bucketize that up into some themes, and how do you pick out the priorities to help your business win, and also subsidize or minimize the effect of some of those themes? And I think Matt's comment on how the world continues to evolve, I think soft skills as a CISO is really important. You can come from the audit side, the governance side, risk side, the more technical side. All of that sort of encapsulates the business decisions that you're making. And remember, if you're feeling some way about those decisions, the other executives around your company are similarly feeling some way about the decisions they're making every single day. So you have to be a great business partner. You have to be an amazing leader. And I think you have to be a multitasking genius to be successful in what we do.
Everything that Billy said, yes, yes, and yes. I got to agree.
The last part especially, right?
The soft skills are really important because although you're the CISO, you're in charge of risk, you don't do all the work. A lot of it, because it's woven into every department and every employee. You have to be, and I hate the cheerleader or the evangelist, but you really have to be the advocate. And you have to have those soft skills because you have to make security relevant. to every other manager in the organization, C-suite, frontline managers, all the way down to the employees. They have to see the value of it, because no matter what we do in security, there's a cost to it. It may be budget, it may be headcount, it may be friction for those individual employees. How many of us love using strong passwords? Nobody, right? But it's a necessary friction that we add. Now, if people realize it's important, they'll do it and it'll be okay. But if they don't see the value of that, then they're not going to do it. They're going to go around it. And so a lot of what CISOs need to do is to get everybody on board and behind it. But to do that, you have to be able to communicate the relevance to them. And every organization is going to be different and every person is going to be different, but you need their help, right? You need them from not doing bad things, clicking on things they shouldn't click, installing things they shouldn't install, reporting things when they see something wrong in their environment. You don't know their apps or their tools or what should be or shouldn't be happening. They are a great detective mechanism, right? And then if things do go sideways, you're going to need their help to get things back up and running. So you need everybody on board, but you need the soft skills, as Billy was saying, to be able to communicate and get that advocacy woven in and everybody on the same page. People should not go, oh, it's the security person. It's the cop he's just going to hit me with a stick. No, I'm your business partner. If I'm going to finance, we're talking about how, we make sure that somebody doesn't move a decimal point, because that's really what they're worried about. Don't mess with my decimal points. I'm finance, right? I go to HR and they're like, no, I don't care about, don't, lose the confidential in my data, right? This is private data. Do not expose it. I'm okay with the day of downtime. Just don't expose it. This is very personal data, right? And every group, IT is just all about uptime, right? I've got to hit my 4 nines or I lose my bonus, right? They're going to yell and scream and get me up at 2 a.m. in the morning, right? So, depending on who we're talking to, we're crafting that message on how security helps them and helps the business, helps their customers, helps the bottom line, helps the profitability. And for that, you need the soft skills.
Very interesting. Hearing the expectations on taking on all these different responsibilities, both integrating the soft skills, mastering the relationships, the technical ability, to go on the other end, and kind of got brought into the comment section. Do you think it's necessary to start, delineating the responsibilities of the CISO beyond like a vice CISO to maybe, a chief data officer or some sort of hierarchy to remove some of the pressure and allow each person in the pipeline to work more effectively? Do you think that the CISO can, juggle all these balls, or do you think that we're almost coming to the breaking point where they need to take some of the pressure off their shoulders?
I think from my perspective, I think I love Matt's comment of sometimes when you come in the room, you almost see the air leave people because they're like, wow, the security people. So I think in that case, I view them as impediments. And we have to get over that obstacle, and we have to teach them all to be evangelists. And so I think the heart of solving the question there is, sure, we need security folks everywhere. And people can't feel threatened that there are security people across the business. That's important to have, similar thinking. It's important to have them, focused on their key priority areas. But it's also important to have security folks that can kind of talk about the overall objectives or the overall messaging or the priorities from the CISO organization, wherever that is. What I've seen a lot in the industry is you have a CISO org, and then you'll have subgroups standing up across the business, so that you might have more devoted level of thinkers wherever they are. But inversely, you certainly don't want people thinking of your CISO only as the sort of policy chief, and then there's running these gap assessments against the policy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think it depends on the size of the organization. If it's a small startup, the CISO is going to have to do it all. Whereas if you've got a multi-billion-dollar corporation and 100,000 people worldwide, the CISO is going to have a staff, and one person may be dedicated to privacy, another one GRC, and another one for internal IT security infrastructure, and another one for, right? And so it's got a scale. But, expanding too fast and consuming too many resources is just as bad as not having enough staff. Right. I mean, you can shoot yourself in the foot if you expand too big and you start impacting the profitability of the company and you're not justifying what you're doing. That's bad news, too. So we've got to hit a very tight center ring, right? And be consistent with it and understand this is not a one-time fix, right? We don't go in and fix it and we're all done. Hey, good. You know, it's beer 30. Cybersecurity is sustaining. It's a long game. It's going to be there as long as the organization is there and thriving. So you have to plan it as a long game. And, you know, it takes teamwork, right? And you have to show value. You just can't be a burden. You have to show value.
So I'd love to kind of dig into your personal experience here. And, you know, what was your welcome to the big leagues moment where you as a CISO started to understand what you're getting yourself into, started to kind of see what the people on the other side of the table are asking you, and, you know, believing in yourself that you can really do it? Because a lot of people go into new positions and they either get, you know, scared senseless where they can't handle it, or there's this whole, you know, process of thinking. I'd love to hear from you guys, you know, with this vast experience. Was there a moment where you're sitting at your desk and, you know, I finally, you know, it's coming clear, or do you think that it takes 5, 10, 15, 20 years before you start getting a grip on, you know, what the expectations could realistically be? How can I really manage both my skill set and this kind of dynamic? What do you think?
I think what you're describing is agility. So I think the idea around security, at least for me, in the first large scale situation that I was in, it involved understanding the entirety of the threat landscape. Before that, I think I was very narrow focused. So I would understand the things that were important to me and the things that I was comfortable in as I grew up into the field. As opposed to now, when I hear something, I start thinking about all the other ways that something could be magnified, because I want to really get to the theme of the problem instead of isolating the specifics around it. Now, I think as people come up, I think people really need to be weary of things called, like, you know, things like imposter syndrome. They can do this job. They have to have a little bit of confidence. They have to understand, you know, in whichever industry you're working in and the verticals around you and the material. You know, we have tremendous amounts of training now. I think, and Matt, maybe you know this by heart, I think we have 600 or 700 certifications in our industry, which tells you we have 600 or 700.
Vital, right? All of them will individually get you a job. You just need to do all of them at once. Yes.
Super important. I give you that loosely to say, you know, I don't know any other industry that has so many different ways or creative ways of solving a single problem. And then testing you on it. So I think for us, listen, the first part is understanding your landscape. Maybe 1A is you got to read that balance sheet. You have to understand the agility, gain your visibility, and then be prepared. And sometimes being prepared means you have to think about things that you don't know has happened yet, or you're uncertain may happen. But you have to have that plan B or plan C, because the business is looking at you to drive through sort of bad situations when they occur.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I had been in cybersecurity for many years. And, you know, I had managed SOC and incident command and IT security. And I thought I had a pretty good grasp on things. I was feeling good. And then I got asked to manage cybersecurity risk for mergers, acquisitions, divestitures, site closures, and co-locations around the world. Now, that was a wake up. When you buy a company, you have to, you know, go out there and understand what are all their problems in their industry, right? And so it wasn't just the high-tech industry. We were buying companies all over the place, right? So I ended up working on over 120 different M&A deals. And having to go in there and understand, I have to worry about internal threats here. I've got employees that are stealing equipment and data. I'm going over here and I've got employees and vendors leaking information to foreign governments. I've got, you know, and it just, wow. It was a wake-up call for me, because I thought I had, okay, I've got infrastructure, I've got endpoint, I've got network, I've got perimeter, I've got this, I've got that, tools, engineering. I'm good. I've got this. And then you go into that and you realize how everything is actually integrated, right? Physical security ties in, right? Dealing with HR and vetting processes and legal contracts with employees and vendors and suppliers, that all counts too. And oh, regulatory, well, where are your customers at? Oh, I've got regulations that we know. And so it was a wake up moment. And I could say that was one wake up moment. There were many others. And I think every good CISO that is on the fringe is going to wake up every week or every month and go, I've got a new challenge, something I haven't seen, something I wasn't aware of. Right. And have to then pivot and adapt and go, okay, I'm going to go figure this out. I'm going to call colleagues. I'm going to call my network. I'm going to go get a certification. I'm going to do training. I'm going to do something, but I'm going to go figure this out or get help to manage that risk. So it's a never ending, right? That's part of the chaos and ambiguity. If everything was static, we could learn it all and we'd be great. But
it'd be so much easier. Could we just pause? Could we just take a soft pause and I could just learn everything I missed in the past 4,000 years or so, and then we could start back up when I'm schooled on what the hell's going on.
Find that easy button too. I want that easy button wherever it is. I need that.
Cyfluencer will be selling that in the next quarter, but you have to send us a message. But that's on the next docket. What were you saying, Billy?
I think Matt's last point was an important one, especially for listeners that are saying, how do I break into my first CISO role? You can't value your network enough. I think young people in your career, it's important. Don't burn bridges. Learn from other folks. There's always an opportunity to learn and make your program better. Even if you feel like you have the best program in the world, there's someone out there smarter than you, better than you, more agile than you. Take the time to learn and listen and figure out what variables you can incorporate.
Yeah. Nobody's got it all figured out. Nobody does. Leverage your network. Right. And there are specialty people out there that know so much and they're in a niche, leverage them. And we're part of a team. And even when, I was with Intel, I would work actively with, business competitors. But at the end of the day, we're all just potential victims. Right. It's all the good guys trying to defend IT and the infrastructure and digital assets and everything against the bad guys and gals who are trying to undermine that and create victims. So at the end of the day, we're all in the same. So we have to communicate and we have to collaborate. We have to. Otherwise, we have zero chance in maintaining parity with the rapid evolution and growth of the attackers. So either we work together or we all just perish. And we're seeing that more and more where organizations are coming together, people and groups, and we're more open about sharing data and insights, and we're doing it. We still need to get better.
Yeah, for sure. I think my next question to you guys, hearing about your diverse international experience working with these multinational companies, especially Billy, when you mentioned Hyundai earlier, I'd really love to hear how working with a major Asian player, forced you to reapproach both your communication strategy and to be able to prioritize what they deemed as, appropriate risk. Because from what the West or an individual company, everything is completely different. So for you, was that something that, it was a very nuanced approach? It was something that had to come very quickly. What was the process like? And then Matt, I'm going to jump into you on all those different things as well. Have no fear.
Okay.
For me, it was learning how to communicate all over again. It's interesting. I think we just spent a lot of time in this conversation talking about all the things in your role and how to grow. When I started working there, it was learning how to communicate all over again. It was things like how to shake people's hands, believe it or not, how to exchange business cards, how to listen, how to understand when a translator is talking in your ear versus I think the nonverbal cues that maybe you're reading or reacting to across the table. And all of those things, I can tell everyone on this call, I was wrong in the beginning. I was just so wrong. I came from an American culture where we sort of have this alpha personality and we know things because we know them and sort of try to impart those viewpoints on the world. And what I learned was the world has some pretty impressive views itself. And so I listened a lot and built strong relationships, and it was the foundation that helped you sort of grow and curate I think, a long-standing and way more successful program than I would have just sort of saying, here's how I did it in the past, let's replicate that.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing to think that the rest of the world outside of America has opinions that matter. But this just into potentially somebody watching. If you're not in America, your opinions also matter.
Sure.
But yeah, it's fascinating to hear that and your realization as well. As somebody with a diplomacy background, understanding how different cultures miss that nuance, and then because of that, they both can't form the basic relationships, and more importantly, there's not the establishment of trust. And if there's not trust between the CISO and the organization and the individuals and everybody who's coming in, it's just not going to work. They're not going to listen to you. You're not going to be able to make that impact. So on the other end, before we jump into Matt's experience, was there a time frame where you felt, after 6 months or a year that you were kind of this American in sheep's clothing, where you could get the ideas and kind of act as this intermediary to some of your peers who kind of missed those soft cues or didn't understand how the sensitivities or the focus areas could be a little bit different, even if they were expressed in the same way?
Yes and no. I think it was a complicated experience. I think every time you approached solving something, it was important to get global team members involved. It was important to understand what the headquarters perspective was. But I think equally it was important to spend some time and educate and thematically level up the conversation. I think there I learned a lot about 360-degree leadership and sort of this constant impact and involvement of that key characteristic. I also learned the true practical implementation of what we know as servant leadership. I think it's important not to worry about things like titles on your business card, and it's important to worry about what the right thing to do is, even in the face of adversity. You must do the right thing, and you must find diplomatic ways to drive those I think impactful things home.
Matt, as the globe trekker who's speaking to everybody around the world and companies and governments and students, how do you kind of integrate this approach where essentially every time you give a different speech, your audience approaches it and thinks about it a little bit differently, and what they take away is changing? So are we here? Do you take this deep breath and kind of give them that extra moment, or do you sometimes try and maybe there's an easy way? Maybe the people to the left and the people to the right could just hear this conversation.
Well, you have to understand your audience wherever you're at, and to build a little bit on what Billy was talking about, and let me be a little more brutal, right? Because I'm American. We believe we're the smartest, we're the best. It has to be our way. And when you start traveling around the world and truly opening yourself up and listening to people, you realize different cultures have different rules and they have great ideas too. And one of the things I learned very early on is to embrace that and share, what are your objectives? What are your challenges? And, let them contribute and go, hey, we've seen that before and we approach it this way. And a tremendous amount of innovation can come from anywhere in the world. I remember, being in Egypt, and this was actually just after, there was a little coup there, and Arab Spring. But, working with people there, and a lot of my other colleagues were like, well, this is, they're not very technical. And the reality was there were some brilliant people there and very savvy and had some great ideas and innovation. And the other thing is I shared with them and we went back and forth. I started understanding, okay, what are their strengths? And there's also risks too, right? I've been in parts of the world where we look at them and go, well, hey, they leak information or they, this. And when you go in there and you start understanding the culture, and it may not be malicious, it may be simply the culture that this is what a good citizen does. And that's okay, right? And everybody, you go to your weekly meeting and understanding that also contributes to the risks, but understanding the underpinnings of that, the currents underneath that, help from a security perspective because it gives you better ideas in how to potentially address that, right? Instead of going, people are just malicious, they're going to do bad things, understanding what that motivation is and what the culture around is supporting it. And you can approach problems better than just building higher walls. You can actually go after the root of risks and potentially, you know, be a force multiplier. And so again, you know, I would encourage everybody in cybersecurity to spend time and actively go to different cultures, different countries, and open yourself up and listen, you know, provide challenges that you're dealing with and see how they respond, what they would do, learn, be part of that and be open to it. And don't come in like us normal Americans do. We're Americans, we know the best, and I'm going to ignore everybody else. We have to set that aside. Right? People are brilliant no matter where they are, no matter where they were born, no matter what color their passport, right? And we have to be open to that. And that includes the diversity even when we hire. We've got a problem in our industry about women and underrepresented minorities. We need to get away from that. We need to not only have equality, but also equity. So we've got to reverse some things there. And again, if we only talk to people that have the same passport as us, and look like us, we are at a disadvantage because I'll tell you, the attackers have that diversity. And because of it, they have an incredible amount of innovation. And we won't be able to match that unless we also open our minds and allow that to come in.
That was inspiring. I'm like really, really motivated by that. So maybe we'll end on a little bit of a rapid fire. What do you guys think?
Bring it on. I got coffee.
Yeah. Billy, even if you don't agree, I'm asking. So let's do this. Okay. Favorite IT-based movie? Yeah, that's a tough one. Think about a movie with or cyber-based threat. How about that? Movie with cyber-based threat.
Matrix. I love the opposing force. I love it. We are the underdogs.
And Keanu's such a nice guy. He's such a nice guy.
Why does someone want to make a copy of the video? I'll figure it out.
Billy, what do you say?
I said Matrix before, but we're having connection issues. I'm gonna go with Star Wars.
Okay, well, that's good. That's good. Very futuristic. I like it. I like the threat. The threat is real. What podcast should we be listening to?
Oh my gosh, there's so many.
Right.
I tend to go down a slipstream of podcasts constantly. But you know, for everyone listening out there, my new podcast is coming out at the end of
that was a good plug right there if I've ever heard one.
Wow.
I thought I was the marketing guru. Wow. Billy, CISOs are doing a lot more, but like let somebody in marketing keep their job, okay?
All right. I think we should do more of these, and we should listen to the Cyfluencer. How about that?
I think that's good. I have two more questions for you. What book do you think that young cyber professionals should be reading?
Sun Tzu, Art of War.
Oh yeah.
Ancient tome, and yet it applies. It still applies. Know yourself.
And it's not too technical, right? Not too technical. Not too technical.
No, not too technical at all. But you got to understand yourself. You got to understand your adversary, and you got to realize that there are powers that be that rule and govern security. We're a tool, right? Mm-hmm. So just like a general is a tool, it's really the embodiment of the government that determines what their goals are going to be and whether they're going to be funded and what success looks like.
Mm-hmm. And the last question, what do people in the IT and cyber community need to do to give back to those people who are trying to get their first job, trying to make that first inroads, trying to really make a splash and not have it as something that's passing, but something that really helps define them and really get meaning and understanding? Do you think it's forming like a mentorship relationship? If it's, we talked about these certifications, what's the thing that people need to be able to really think about that's important for them?
I think a couple of things. First, I don't want to lose the last question because it was awesome. I think 5 Levels of Leadership is important. For me, it was a transformative book. And I think next project for anyone in software. It's an incredible book to read. For these, for this current question, I think yes. Go get a mentor. Get 5 mentors. Go ask people what you should do, and then in turn give it back. I think you can't pay it forward enough in this business. And for those that think they don't have time, they don't have the willingness, they get aggravated, continue to pay it forward. It pays dividends whether you see it or the next generation. You just can't do enough for the community.
Yeah, I would echo that. The reality is we're not going to solve it all. We're not. And we need to help transition that next generation of cybersecurity professional that will carry on with our successes and our mistakes, right? There will be burdens, I'll tell you that. But you have to pay it forward. And it helps the entire community. No one organization fixes everything. So we have to help the people coming in. We have to help people that are moving and laterally even in this industry. So, whether it's being a mentor, whether it's just speaking up, whether it's joining in a group, whether it's giving advice, whether what not to do or what you should do, but just be part of the community. You have something. Every single person has something to give and share that is really going to help somebody that's trying to come into this industry. Even if it's to warn them off and go, this is the type of hours we work, and this is the heartache, and get a mouth guard because you're going to grind your teeth at night, and whatever it is, right? Contribute and let them know that it's okay to reach out and to ask. We are a community, and we are all on the same side. Doesn't matter what company or organization you work for. At the end of the day, we're all the potential victims. So we need to work together. So don't be afraid to reach out.
I think that's an amazing point, and it's so great to hear that. Obviously, my child needs some mentorship as well. That even after all this experience and all these, you've really both collectively worked yourselves up there, understanding that you can't get to where you are without giving back, and that everybody has this responsibility, and the only way that you can know is by asking these questions. So. With that, I think the audience would love to know, where can they find out a little bit more about you? Where can they find your writing, hear more about your speaking, see your internet presence? Billy, where can we find you?
I'm all over the place, but you can go to and you can find most things there.
Amazing. Matt, where can we find you?
You can follow me on LinkedIn. I've got a good number of followers out there. So I put all my articles and blogs, and when I speak, all that information I put out there so you can see that. I also host 2 different podcasts. So Cybersecurity Insights, Cybersecurity Vault. So you can do a search on that. There's papers out there and whatnot. And reach out, right? Especially if, we're at a conference, whether it's virtual or real. I see people reaching out now. That's awesome. Again, we're all on the same team. So, yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. Important to echo that sentiment. Reach out if you see people at conference. Reach out at LinkedIn. Don't be afraid to say, hey, I'm sure the same is for you, Matt. I get hit up all the time. And I do my very best to respond as quickly as I can. But I do respond to every single request that I get. It just may take me a little longer than others.
Yeah.
I don't quite have the following Matt does, but I'm looking forward to it. So.
We can't all be Matt Rosenquist. It's tough,
Who is this guy? What?
I hear he's some sort of influencer. I don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah. I saw a TikTok. That's what I meant to say. I saw like a really good TikTok of you doing a little dance, and I was like, that guy is a cyber personality I need to follow.
Yeah, that's worrisome.
It wasn't a deep fake. I can assure the entire crowd it was not a deep fake. Anyway,
I'm saying it is. If you saw that, it was definitely a deep fake.
You should have seen what happened to me.
Don't try and sell us anything, but reach out. I will make time. If somebody has a security problem or question, I'll make time to answer it. If you're just trying to sell me a product or a wear, you're not going to hear from me.
Same.
Yeah. So amazing. Thank you guys so much for your time. We really appreciate your insights. This has been, for me, and I'm sure for the entire crowd, really, enlightening to be able to understand both your collective journey and what we really need to be thinking about, what the responsibility of these people that we put all this pressure and, often very quickly fire after a major attack. And to hear, not only is the pressure and responsibility and expectations coming out of every single door, but the professionals who are doing it are very, very insightful and nuanced and aware of how these risks affect them, their organization, and it's really nice to be able to hear this kind of clarity. So thank you so much for your time, and we really look forward to talking to you soon. Have a good night, everybody. Be well.
Thank you much.